and welcome to another episode of Mysteries with a History, where I'll take you on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. First, I want to say hi to some people in the live chat: Backwoods Buster, Stefan, Brian, Skyhawk. How is everyone doing today? Before we get started, I'm really pumped about my new website called strangeparadigms.com. And I put my first blog entry yesterday, and I will be writing pretty much every day a journal and blogs. Plus, it has all my shows in video and podcast links. So make sure to check it out, bookmark it, and share it with your friends. And so, to today's fascinating topic. Brazil has had their fair share of UFO sightings, some of which may surprise you. Some of the UFO sightings have been very benign, while others not so much, and involving physical harm such as burns and puncture wounds, to radiation sickness and even death, as well as abductions and disappearances. UFO crashes have also occurred in Brazil along the sightings of the occupants being witnessed on so many occasions. So, before we get into today's topic, let me bring in my friend and co host, Jimmy Church from Faded Black Radio. Jimmy, how are you?
I am doing better now that I'm here. How are you, Cristina? Thank you for asking.
I'm doing good. My eyes are a bit itchy today, so I'm not wearing contacts. As you can tell, I'm wearing my glasses. So hopefully it's not too distracting.
Right before the show, I'm settling in because Cristina and I were chatting, and something very cool happened in real time. Cristina got to experience it. I had something fly over my house so low, and the house started shaking, and I could hear things rattling, and I was like, and she was like, "So Jimmy, what's And I go, "I gotta go," and I ran outside, and it was so loud, Cristina. It was,
I heard it. I could hear it from
yeah,
here.
like a rocket or something low. And I ran outside. I ran out the front. Maybe I should have run out the back. Had to make a decision. I looked around. I didn't see anything, but I've never heard anything that loud that shook my house. And it was great. It just happened. So I forgot my coffee. I had to, but it's all good now, and I'm a little winded. That happened like 3 minutes ago while everybody was listening to the music roll in. That's when it went down. So that was nuts. That was loud. So
It's a good way to start the show. I think so.
You heard it through the microphones.
I did. So that just goes to show how loud that was, because your microphone is a directional microphone. It doesn't really catch that outside noise.
No, there's a noise gate on it too as well. So if I shut up, right, it goes quiet, right? So if something like that from outside is keeping the noise gate open, I mean, it was like stupid, like earthquake stuff. That was nuts, man. That was cool. Little excited. I was like, I'm a little adrenaline fight right now. That was pretty cool. Okay, yeah, no sonic boom, Brian. No, this lasted for about a minute, 30 seconds a minute. Wow. Okay. Brazil. I cannot wait for this. And again, I say it every week. Great subject. Craziness going down in Brazil. Now, when we get into these cases today, specifically two, if you have children in the room, you may want to cover their ears, because Brazil. Can I say this? I'm a little uncomfortable mentioning this, but it's part of these two cases. Is that Brazil is a very sexual country, right? I mean, they're proud of their bodies, and the parades and the things that they do, and the dancing. It's a very sexual country, and two of these cases talk about sexual encounters with aliens, and it's got to be talked about. It's part of the case in both of these cases. So when we get to that, I'll keep it clean. Cristina, of course, you will too. But the way that these, how do I say it? The testimony of it
Yeah.
it's very it's a part of the case with both of them, and I just think that's Brazil, and that is, and what I mean by that, and we're going to get into it, but what I mean by that is when we look at these cases, is this part of the culture? Is this the way people think? Right? There's that. Could that have influenced this? Is what I'm saying, or is it that in some cases around the world and in the United States where this may happen in an abduction case or a UFO encounter, an alien encounter, that it's not discussed because people aren't comfortable with it. Right? You follow what I'm saying? And
I
then
do.
in Brazil, hey man, this is how it went down. So let me tell you what happened, right? And so maybe there's that part of it too. So anyway, Brazil, amazing.
Brazil. I'm excited. And every week you ask me, Christina, how did you come up with the topic for today's show? And I actually have a story for this
Oh,
week's show, how we got to
the
why we're
week
doing Hotspots of Brazil.
the,
So I I had the pleasure to watch James Fox's final cut of his new film that will be released later this year about Varginha, Brazil. He asked for my feedback, and let me just tell you, if you thought The Phenomenon was good, his last film, you are going to be blown away with the visuals, with the narrative, and with everything that's coming out with this new film. I'm telling you, I called him on the phone and I was just raving, and I'm like, this is the best film you've ever done. I don't know how you're going to top this one. And that's what I thought with your last film. So for everyone that's looking forward to it, in my opinion, I don't think you're going to be disappointed.
No, it's a great film. It's an amazing film. He has that challenge that you just pointed out, Christina. All of his stuff is, I know what I saw out of the blue. These films are set such a standard, not
Yeah.
only for us in the community. What's this next? It's got to be great because of his last film, but it puts the challenge on him too as well.
Mhm.
He knows what he has to top, and I'm in agreement. This is a great film, and there are moments in the film that are very, very, very tense.
Yep.
There's some tense moments, and I don't want to give anything away or any spoiler alerts, but I'll say this to you, Christina. There's a moment in the film. I'm not going to say who, what, none of that. I just want your reaction. There's a moment in the film where they pull up, and there's a guy talking in a window, right? And when Fox walks away and the mayhem starts, was that like the most tense moment? Was that, were you like,
I
man?
I think there was some other clips that really caught, like, that I felt were really tense. I don't wanna spoil it for anyone. We're definitely doing some teasers here,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
when it comes out by I think around the end of this year, you're gonna love it. And Michael, thank you so much for the super sticker. Really appreciate it. And I think that's also a great way to start the show. So the first case that we're gonna cover is about Antonio Vilas-Boas in October of 1957. And this encounter, this story, may be the first famous public spoken about alien abduction, because this happened about 4 years prior to the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. So nothing was really talked about during 1957. So let's get into it. In Mejias, Guerras, Brazil, Antonio on October 15th in 1957 was abducted by aliens at the age of 23. And what's really interesting about his case in particular is the fact that allegedly, he had seen lights about 10 days prior before his alleged abduction. And not just himself, but also his brother had also seen these lights. And they were living on a farm. They had several pieces of land to do their plantations. So, for looking out, being outdoors, looking into the sky, this was something new for them. So, when they saw these bizarre, very fast moving lights, of course, it caught their attention. But on the day of his alleged abduction. This happened in the nighttime hours because it is stated that to beat the heat, his family would do all the tilting and removing all the crops during the nighttime to avoid that intense heat. So when they were out, him and his brother, side by side, um, Antonio, he saw just this strange light and it just kept suddenly darting, right? Back and forth at tremendous speeds across the field to the point where Antonio said, I'm going to go check it out. I'm going to go follow this light and see what happens. And apparently in his testimony, he had stated that it was this darting back and forth happened no less than 20 times. If I were him, I would be extremely exhausted chasing this light back and forth 20 times. And he himself was also discouraged and he returned back to his brother. But at around 1 a.m., that's when it gets wild. Jimmy, do you want to take over and tell the interesting part? Or do you want me to continue?
There's a couple of points at this point. There's a couple of points at this point. At this juncture that I found interesting. One, the light was red.
That's
Okay.
right.
And let's remember a couple of things as this couple of points that you brought up. Betty and Barney Hill didn't happen until 1961. This is 1957. And there isn't really a point of reference for there he is there, boss, to maybe glean information from or get ideas from. This was all new. So anyway, so he goes out and he describes it as a red light. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Boom, it's a craft. And and I'm pulling all of this from memory. In that I researched this case about as far as I could take it, and there's a lot of information out there, and there are quite a few skeptics that came into play. Now, a little bit about Antonio first. He said a couple of things that he tried to get away on his tractor on the farm, and the tractor died and wouldn't start back up, and he climbs off the tractor and takes off running. Skeptics later pointed out that if we look at this case as we do with a lot of cases in Brazil, that immediately people were saying there's no way that a poor farmer in Brazil deep in the jungle would know anything about UFOs or know anything about this or know anything about society. And they can't read, they can't write, they can't do the, and therefore his story is true. And there's something to be said about that. Then the skeptics came in and said, if he and his family owned a tractor in the interior of Brazil, then they were a family of means. This guy could read, he could write, he could do things that other farmers, out in the remote jungle in the interior of Brazil could not do. And that later in life, he became a lawyer. And he did that through a correspondence course, which is reading and writing and taking your testing and doing all of that. And he did. Later in life, he became a lawyer. So he went from a farmer with his family when he went through this experience, went through life, and became a lawyer. And the critics are saying, "See, we told you he's not some dumb guy. You know, he was actually very smart." So there's that part of it. The other side, though, is Antonio throughout his entire life stood by the story. Absolutely, it happened the way it happened. Okay. Now, where do you want me to go next, though? Because there's a couple of, you want me to go straight to the craft?
Well, to kind of lead into that, this was happening about around 1 a.m., where he saw this red light. It was coming closer to the point where he was able to see the shape of the craft that he described it as a large, elongated egg. Now, what's interesting about it is that he then saw, so his tractor died. Okay, I should probably continue with that. His tractor died. It was no longer working. He saw this craft descend to the ground. 3 legs came out and it landed. While he was trying to run away, which an average person would, when he was trying to run away, 3 types of entities came out of that craft and practically took him into that spacecraft. They held him from the arms, from the legs, and they tried to take him in no matter how hard he was trying to push out of these beings' grip. He was unable to do so. And he had stated that these were kind of small beings up to about his shoulder, and they were
5 foot.
wearing very strange clothing as
Helmet.
well,
They had
and
helmets.
helmets.
They had helmets, but he could see their faces, which I thought was interesting. He said they had pointy chins,
Mhm.
which was another interesting point. Let's go back to the egg, though. Can we go back to the egg?
Let's do it.
So immediately, today, right? Tic Tac. Okay, all right, I'll go with that. There are a couple of other sightings or cases that we're going to discuss about Brazil that also describe the same type of craft. But here's the deal: he said 3 legs came down
Mhm.
out of the craft and landed. And just think of Zamora and Socorro, New Mexico, egg-shaped craft, 3 landing legs, and and that didn't happen yet. That was in the 1960s. So this is 1957, and a very interesting point that we need to just like freeze frame on and think about. Okay, we've got an egg-shaped craft. We've got 3 landing legs. We've got a couple of other incidents in Brazil that happened years later with the same description, but also we have the Socorro, New Mexico contact and encounter with Lonnie Zamora with 3 landing legs and an egg-shaped craft. Okay, so then, all right, immediately when he gets on the craft, he says, once inside, they strip me down.
Yep, they just ripped off his clothes and then they applied this type of gel
Gel.
on his skin. And before we continue, Mark, thank you so much.
Oh, my man, Tasaka. Right on. He had to get in. He got in big. He got in early. All right.
Thank you, thank you.
Mark. So anyway, yeah, so they strip him down naked
Right?
and they cover his body in this gel. Later on, for the rest of his life, he had issues with radiation and poisoning.
Well,
Skin
you're getting ahead of yourself, Jimmy. Hold on, hold on.
thing, but no, I'm not. I'm saying that this gel that was applied to him at that early stage, he didn't understand. I think that protected him from craziness that this could have really gotten out of control later. He didn't realize it at the time, but that they were covering him with this gel, in my mind, in research in this case over the years, to protect him from the radiation. It didn't
That's
do it
interesting.
100%, but it could have been a lot worse. And he was very sick for many years. Okay, so now,
Oh, that's right. Well, in his testimonies, he believed that it was a kind of germicide and later on a type of Viagra as well, and we're gonna get into that a little bit later. But the fact that you're stating that it could have been a protection from the radiation, but he still got radiation poisoning years later,
yep.
that's a very interesting idea. I
Was
dig
always
it.
my take. That was always my take on the case because his description also, and doctors, he saw many doctors over this.
Mhm.
It was the nausea, it was the body pains and the aches, and of course the lesions and the sores and things that were happening all over his body. That and he had radiation levels that were found on his body. So that gel probably saved his life. Many have speculated what the gel was for, including Antonio. But okay, so now he's standing there. He's butt naked. He's covered in gel. What happens next, Christine? I'm going to leave this on you.
All right. Well, what happens next is that he sees these very weird writings on the wall, and they were actually in red. And he says that he remembered it so vividly that he was able to write it down when he was giving his testimony, talking to doctors and to others about his encounter. And this is what he saw. And he said that when he looked at it, when he gave it to others, no one was able to understand what this was. And even when I'm looking at it, I also am not familiar what it is either. So as he is waiting, he's in this room alone at this point. He's completely naked. He's coated in this gel. He sees those symbols on the wall. And then this, in his own words, well, actually, before I even say that, before he's in that room by himself, these entities actually remove blood from his chin
Yep.
completely naked. So let me pull that up for you. Here's a kind of illustration of how this looks, how he described these entities to look as well. They do look a little bit taller than the way he described it himself, but as you're able to see, they took a type of apparatus, they put it right below his chin, meeting the neck area, collecting this blood. So after the blood has been collected, he's in the room by himself. And then, in his own words, he states that he just entered this beautiful humanoid woman. She was
Oh,
also
wait. I
okay.
might have this confused, but didn't he say they they gassed him and they sedated him with chemicals when he was alone in the room before they came back in?
Not
He had trouble. He said that even though I could have this backwards, but did they gas him later? Anyway, that even though they gassed him and even though he was chemically modified, he remembered everything from this,
his
including
memories weren't wiped.
right. It was like in this room for like 30 minutes. And that's when he saw the red writing. And he was able to absolutely remember all of this, even though they were gassing him I don't know if they injected him
Well,
during this period,
it
but that
it says
yeah, go
go ahead.
ahead.
It says during this time, an unknown foul smelling gas was pumped into the room that made Antonio feel ill and disoriented. He believed it was some sort of disinfectant,
Right.
allowing this female humanoid to enter without a helmet. Because as we saw in the previous photo, when they were extracting blood from Antonio, they were still wearing masks, they were still wearing these helmets. But after this gas was injected in the room, the woman was completely naked, so also no helmet as well. So it could have been disinfectant. Could it have been a type of environment to allow this humanoid to breathe properly? Obviously, we don't know, but it is something worth thinking about. Also, Michael, thank you so much for the super sticker. So, what did you want to add before I cut you off, Jimmy? I do apologize.
No. That I just remember that that part of this. I don't have extensive notes and things, but I do remember that. And insecticide was mentioned a few times in this case. He's a farmer, and he's thinking about things. Um, and so maybe he thinks that this gas, he shoots pesticides on his farm, maybe. So he thinks that that is what is going on. Cristina, go to big screen. I've got a jet for 10 seconds.
All right.
Continue.
Okay. So then, after he's been disinfected in his belief, after he's been applied with this gel that he also believes is a type of germicide, and later on he believes it to be a Viagra, this beautiful humanoid woman enters and she is completely naked. He describes her as very attractive with blonde and almost white hair, large cat like blue eyes, a pointed chin, broad hips with heavy thighs. Antonio claims that he felt an overwhelming attraction to this humanoid and had intercourse with her. Now, in a very stressful situation, a very pressured situation, you wouldn't think that to the point where you would just be overwhelmed to have intercourse with an unknown entity in an unknown location, right? After you've been stripped naked, after blood's been taken from you, and you smell this horrible gas. For the average person, you wouldn't think about mating during those very high stressful times. So also it makes you question, could have that gas also been a type of sedative, but also a type of arousement as well to arouse the senses? Well, they end up mating and for about an hour, and he had remembered clearly they never kissed, but she gently bit on his chin and made strange noises like a growling dog. And after their time was over, she points at her stomach and then points to the stars. So he took that as symbolism of stating she is now pregnant and she is going to raise their child not on Earth. Oh, Jimmy, sorry, you're muted.
Oh, there. Am I unmuted?
Yes,
Okay. I said, did I miss all the good stuff?
you did.
I did. I missed all the good stuff.
You missed all the good stuff.
My alarm system went off, and yeah, man, it's just crazy. Yeah, the alarm went off, and so I had to go disarm it, and I did a quick perimeter check and looked at all the cameras, and nothing there. So that's what that was. I was like, uh-oh, and it was getting louder. And if I didn't do that, then the police and I was like, is it gonna shut off? And it was getting louder. And so anyway, that's what that was. Man, what a crazy day. So let's get back to one of I missed the exciting part. I don't know if you mentioned this, but he said, and if you did mention this, you can cut me off. But one of the interesting things he said was that she was hot, right? And he said that she had blonde hair, but had bright red pubic hair. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you mention that?
I specifically did not mention that.
Okay, but the point is he describes her like this, which was like a crazy thing to say, unless it was true. The pointed chin, cat-like eyes, blonde, and the hair didn't match on the body, blonde and this bright red thing. But he said that he was okay with it, that he was actually attracted to this alien being that he was seeing. And I just found that, I mean, because the description is just so crazy and out there, but there was something alluring and there was something going on. And I think that he could tell, that this was about to happen. But he also said, I think he said that they didn't kiss, but she bit him.
That's right. That's right.
Right? She bit his face or something. And the way that he describes it, and I've read different accounts of this, again, he was like, well, just affection for them, and I was okay. It was actually all right. She nibbled on my face. So
Well,
again, just a very interesting take on this whole thing that I don't know. Some would find it frightening. I would have.
well,
Um,
what I've just come to realize looking back at some other cases that we've covered, the red hair. It kind of reminds me of the Japanese UFO woman in the story that happened in the incident Utsurubune, right, in Japan, where this woman, this very, very pale skin, had just bright red hair, bright red eyebrows as well, and didn't speak Japanese at this time. So I think
oh,
they
oh,
kind
oh!
of have a connection. Maybe they don't, but that's what's coming to mind.
But you just brought up a connection, Christina. Well done. Didn't he say the language that they spoke sounded Japanese?
That's actually in another incident, not in this one. These ones sounded almost like an animal, like growls and barks.
Okay,
But
okay.
there is another case that we will cover that happened in Brazil where they almost spoke a type of similar to Japanese.
Right,
So,
right,
so
right.
hold that thought. We're definitely going to get into that. But back to this story in particular. So after this whole incident happened, right? He finds out that he has a child, right? When the woman says, points to her stomach and then to the sky. And at that moment, he felt very upset. He felt used, like he was just there to breed so that the other species is able to have stronger offspring. So he ends up contacting the Brazilian journalist Jose Martes, who places an advertisement on the paper asking if anyone else has ever had a UFO experience and for them to come forward and to tell their story. And after a thorough investigation, Dr. Fontes came to the conclusion that Antonio had suffered a large dose of radiation poisoning and was experiencing radiation sickness to a lesser degree. And while a lot of people, when they have abductions or when they encounter aliens, usually they are asked or they want to go under some type of a hypnosis to remember. But like you had said a little bit earlier, Jimmy, Antonio didn't need to go under hypnosis because he remembered everything that he experienced so vividly, which
Mhm.
in most respects is pretty rare when it comes to alien abductions. And again, this was one of the very first publicly announced alien abduction. So he didn't really have anything to lean on during this time. He didn't know, he didn't have anyone to go to look at their experiences for him to understand his own. And
Well,
I find that kind of interesting.
and Martin and others, they don't know what to ask him.
That's
They don't have
right.
any point of reference either. This was all just brand new stuff for everybody. It's one of the cases for me because of I think it stands on its own merits for a lot of different reasons. And as I pointed out earlier, he was he was covered in sores and lesions
Mhm.
and burns and constant nausea. He got a heavy dose of radiation, and that just doesn't happen like that out in nature. So there's a lot of things to this case that will continue to be very interesting, including the writing and the hieroglyphics. I call them hieroglyphics, not Egyptian, just hieroglyph the symbols that he remembered off of the door. And the other part about this case, different from everything else, not everything else, but a lot, is that there was no regression involved here. There was no suggestions. There wasn't anything. He had extreme detail, extreme,
Mhm.
with all of this just completely committed to memory. And the other thing about the symbols, because this wasn't in regression therapy, this wasn't. I hate to use the word suggestion, but nobody gave him these ideas. And he specifically said, "I looked at that door and I remember everything, and I wanted to remember the symbols, and I did, and I remember that writing, and here it is." That's why this case to me is continually just fascinating.
It is, and while this happened in 1957, the story wasn't made public until 1962, and
Hmm.
it was published in the UFO periodical SBESDV in the month of June of 1962. So he had been sitting on the story for quite some time. The people that he had spoken to had been sitting on the story for quite some time, 5 years. So I think that also, and I mean, I don't know how I feel about that, honestly, if it's good to release that immediately or to wait until more information was found. I mean, what do you think about sitting on a story like that for 5 years?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think anybody sat on the story. Okay, to be quite frank, yes, that version was sat on, but there was reports, and there is a paper trail that goes back to 1957 and 1958, 1959 on this case, and it was covered pretty much immediately after it happened. But we're talking about 1957 in Brazil. This wasn't 1957 in New York City. It's a different situation. So it went public and went big, and it went big quick for sure, but that was 4 or 5 years later. But the case, unfortunately, nobody knew how to handle something like this: an alien abduction, a sexual encounter, seeding of impregnating a female alien and birthing a child and everything else. It was just too strange, and it just didn't get the coverage that it should have in 1957 and 1958. But the case was covered. It wasn't sat on. It was re-revealed, I think is the better way to put it. And yes, then it certainly did explode for sure. What I wanted to do, I'm looking at the clock. We're still on Antonio. At the same time, this is a case. I'm going to jump out of our loop here. I'm going to go in a little bit of a timeline because in 1958, Cristina, was another incident that to me is absolutely one of the most documented crazy UFO encounters in all of history, with the craziest set of photographs that have been analyzed over and over again, that were taken from a government ship and everything else that happened in the Trinidad Islands off of the coast of Brazil in 1958. And in this case, I just have some quick notes on it because I grabbed some photographs. And these photographs, before you put them up on the screen, just a little background. It was in January 1958. It was around noon in the middle of the day, and a Brazilian ship was taking part in projects off of the coast, preparing to sail away from the Isle of Trinidad off the coast of Brazil, when they noticed this object flying in the sky. And one of the people on the ship said, "Dude, take some pictures." And they did, and they snapped 5. And these pictures are incredible. Go ahead and share my screen, if you will, Cristina. Oh, wait, hold on. Don't
Okay.
share yet. Oh, see, you're so good. You're waiting for me to do the right thing. There you go. Okay, so this is the first image. Okay, you can see my mouse. Now you can see the saucer. It's and you can go and look at the case later, and we can talk about distances. But it's a couple of miles away, and here's the island here. The ship is obviously out to sea, and you can see it here. I'm zooming in, and there it is, and you can see it's way out there. That's not a frisbee thrown off the deck of a boat. Okay, so there it is. And here is another image. Now, if we go back, I want you to look at the side of the island, which is here. Okay, and the object came from behind the island. Here it is. Here, look at this. And that's crazy town. Here's another shot. Okay, and like I said, five images were taken. It's this is the one that was published in the media.
And yet 60 years later, now we just get orbs instead of seeing details like this.
Right.
So disappointing.
This to me, you can pull this down. What absolutely, what's going on in Brazil? And these photographs, the original negatives, everything else, they have been analyzed and poured over for 60 years now. The images are authentic. The question is, what is in these images? Now, remember, this was about 6 months after Boas and his incident in Brazil. This happened at the same time.
And
Very crazy.
And 1 month after Boas's incident in 1957, in November, 2 guards in Sao Paulo also interacted with a UFO. And what happened in this story, and I'm just going to briefly go over it because there's a lot to cover today. We don't have a lot of time. In this story, pretty much these 2 guards saw this UFO. And they said it was cylinder and about 100 feet in diameter, and it just had an intense orange brightness. The object was getting closer to these 2 guards, and then the object stopped. These guards were so frightened, they just did not know how to react. And even though each of them was armed with a submachine gun, they hadn't dared to fire the UFO or to raise alarm on maybe anything that could be inside of it. Suddenly, the UFO started emitting a strong humming and a strong heat wave that ended up hitting these 2 men. And even though there wasn't any visible flame or light, their clothes caught on fire. Their clothes were burned to flames. And one of them did not resist. He fell to his knees and he completely fainted due to this type of pain. And the other one took cover under a cannon. And obviously from being on fire, right? The screams alerted the troops that were around there, but the lights went out before anyone could react or even see what was going on. Now, of course, there are debunkers that saying, "Oh, that simply can't be the case. This is 1957." But keep in mind, your average person is not going to walk through a flame just for fun, right? And these people ended up having second-degree burns. Like, this was pretty extreme. Their clothes were totally caught on fire, and there's simply no explanation for that. And again, that was just 1 month after Antonio Boas was abducted, had intercourse with an alien, and then returned back to his home.
Now, two points, and I know that we're up against a break, so I'll make these 2 points. This was on a military base in Brazil, Fort Itaipu, and so now the military is involved. The Brazilian military is involved. A full investigation started on this, and next, the United States military and the Air Force show up, and they also start an investigation into this case, interviewing both of these guys and getting their description of the craft and how. Now, remember, they described it as a heat wave. All right, now that could be it's a weapon of some kind of directed beam. They said heat wave, laser beam, plasma weapon, some exotic technology that we don't know anything about, but definitely a heat wave, and they caught on fire. And that was the last that we heard about this case until Donald Kehoe, many years later, probably a couple of years later, started bringing up this Brazilian case at Fort Itaipu publicly and mentioning it, that there was something going on with our military. The military knows about it. The Air Force has investigated cases here in the United States, including this case at a Brazilian military installation. And this case went dead. It just went quiet.
It did, and that's why I find it very odd. There's a lot more we have to cover, but we're coming towards a break. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Micah Hanks, and let me tell you something. I support Cristina Gomez as a Patreon subscriber, and here's why you should too. She brings all of her unique insights to a whole new generation, and all while she's also going through college. Listen, support Cristina, become a Patreon subscriber today. You won't regret it.
Hey there, it's Cristina. Did you know you can get access to an exclusive extra segment of additional questions and answers with all of my guests, as well as behind-the-scene videos and photos? Ever wonder how I turn my small college dorm apartment into a studio where I can shoot new videos or set up lighting and backdrops for my show, or what camera I use? Yep, that video is there too, where I explain as I go along and also give the story of how I learned to do special video effects and editing. You can get access to all of that and much more by joining my Patreon supporters club. You'll be helping by supporting this channel, my research, and production costs, as well as investing in new shows coming soon. Starting from as little as $5 a month, there are several tiers you can choose from that suit your budget, and each tier carries extra perks and benefits. Join my Patreon club and become a supporter today.
Ronan, thank you so much for the super sticker. It's good to see you here, my friend. Next case that we're going to cover until Jimmy comes in is Colares, Brazil. And let me tell you, this is probably one of my favorite cases of all time currently. I am still learning every single day about new cases, but this one has always really caught my attention. And before I even give a spoiler, we have done a show on Colares, Brazil as its own separate show. We went into great detail. So for today's segment, it's going to be more of a summary, but pretty much what happened in Colares, Brazil in 1977. The entire town was terrorized with UFO craft. So apparently, these beams of light would come down on the people, paralyze them, sometimes abduct them, burn them, place puncture wounds in their skin, and there were disappearances sometimes of certain people and of animals, and 2 people died from this encounter. Now, previous to the story, I had never encountered a story where UFOs or craft were hostile, that were actually physically hurting people. And this wasn't just one day, this was a flap. This happened for 6 months every single day at around 7 or 8 p.m. And it was getting to the point that people were so mortified, they were so scared to go out, that friends and family would all sleep in the same household. They would sleep on the floor, on the couch, in the kitchen, in the living room, because they felt that if more people were together, they could feel a sense of security, but that didn't really do anything for them. These beams of light could still enter through the roof, through the walls, through the windows, and it would place usually about 3 puncture wounds for the females in the chest area, for the men in the jugular area. Of course, they could also happen in the thighs and in the arms. But what's interesting about this case in particular, before I let Jimmy speak, is that this was all documented. And this is called Operação Prato, where the Brazilian government and allegedly the American government as well came into Colares, and instead of bringing weapons, guns and cannons and things to protect these people in Colares, they ended up bringing paper, pencils, and cameras to document exactly what was happening.
Absolutely. They were there for months, filming, documenting, and it is worth noting that this town was so terrified that they would have vigils all night long, people outside watching and staying alert, and they were just terrified. The commander of the Brazilian military, 20 years later, came out and spoke about the case publicly, and 3 months later, he hung himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tragic part of this case. Now, pull up my screen. Got a little treat for you. There is a shot from the Brazilian military of one of the Colares objects. Yeah, you didn't expect that tonight, did you, Cristina? You like that? That's
cool.
pretty cool, isn't it? But I have more. I do. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Another shot from the Brazilian military.
Nice. And
Look at that. Oh, I have more. Look at this object, right? Okay. Check this next one out. Okay.
interesting. And they're all slightly different sizes. I mean, different shapes, not sizes. Excuse me.
And then we have this. Now, this was again. These are 3 shots from the Brazilian military, taken over time. I don't have the exact dates. And then we have this gift.
It's like a little jellyfish.
Look at that jellyfish. Does that
like
remind you of
cartoon
something?
jellyfish?
Does that remind you? Have you ever seen anything like this before, Cristina?
I've seen something similar with my own experience. It's like
That's right.
almost biological, almost
Right.
nuts and bolts. It's kind of an in between.
And this case, to me, there's my next surprise. Okay, you can pull that down. Colares is documented. The military was there for 3 or 4 months. By the way, the Operation Prato, that translates to Operation Saucer. That's right. It was called Operation Saucer. So yes, again, Brazil, and this case, I remember so vividly, the breaking news and this coming out and reading about the case and the military being there. This was pretty big news in Brazil, and they were there. The military. There are reports of the military camped out on the beaches with their video cameras just pointed out to the sky for months on end, and in different spots doing nothing but filming. And then in the end, 4 months, they're there, right? And they just pack up and split. Just one day they're gone. And of course, the commander of this operation, like I said, later, 20 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later.
20 years later.
Yes, 20 years. Comes out and says, okay, it was real. It all happened. And this is what went down. 3 months later, he kills himself, hangs himself. Yeah. Crazy case.
It is. It definitely is. And during this time, when these lights were coming down and terrorizing the people, amongst themselves, they ended up calling it chupa chupa, literally mean sucker, because that's what some people believed, that their blood was being sucked out of them through these puncture wounds. And keep in mind that this town and in Brazil at this time, it's very heavily with Catholic faith. So for them, it was believed to be demonic of some sort. And honestly, I don't blame them. Hearing stories like this, that of these UFOs just really just messing with people to this extent, is incredibly rare. And if you don't have any knowledge on stories like this, yeah, you're probably going to think it's some type of demonic being coming in and doing these horrible things. So when the military came in, Operação Prato, right? The commander of the operation was Captain Uyrangê Lima. And like you had mentioned, 20 years later is when he finally told his story. And he told it specifically to the Brazilian ufologist Jose Gervard and Antonio Petit for the UFO magazine there in Brazil. 2 or 3 months after giving that interview, going into detail of what happened, what they covered, him having his own personal experience with an alien up close, he is found dead in his room after he seemingly hung himself using the belt of his bathrobe. Backing up a little bit, let me kind of go over what he told about with his own experience.
Mm-hmm.
What ended up happening was one night while he was in his home alone, he saw a flash of light, and then this being out of nowhere hugs him from behind. This is a pretty short being, and that's already terrifying. You're living by yourself, and then you have this tiny thing hugging you. And he had stated that this being was wearing a type of metallic type soft material suit and a helmet as well, and it was very difficult to see the face of this being. But then what's interesting about this is that the being speaks to him, and in almost a robotic, metallic like voice, this being says in Portuguese, "Don't worry, we're not going to harm you." This is the drawing that the captain did himself during his interview with UFO magazine, and he had also seen craft in the sky as well. But I find that very impactful that the commander of the operation had his own first-hand experience. And I think that if we didn't have his own experience, he might have never spoken about the operation, which a lot of the paperwork, photos, and witness testimonies can be found on the Black Vault that he filed through FOIA, but not all of it is released, but a good amount is. And the link will be in the description box below for those that want to look into detail on the witness testimonies and some of the photos as well.
When you look at the video interviews that he did right before he died, and you look at the photographs of him during the incident, during his military career, and throughout his military career, we are talking about a military. Okay, this is right. The drawing that you just showed everybody, that's him doing the drawing. Yes, man, good work, Cristina. See, this is live. I didn't know this was coming up. This interview, his matter of factness, the way that he dealt in this interview, this is a very strong individual, very strong personality. And you look at him in uniform, this guy was a commander. This guy was the real deal. And for this man who was completely in control of himself, and he does the drawings and he goes public and he discusses all of this. 3 months later, he just hangs himself with a belt in a bathroom. The whole thing just
doesn't sit right.
No. He was suicided for sure. But this gentleman that you're looking at here, this was a man that was in control of himself and a very strong individual. He wasn't anybody that was thinking about killing himself. No. And it's just tragic. It's the whole thing is tragic. And the video, that's a clip, that's a still from the video
Right.
that Cristina just showed. That video is powerful. That is a powerful, crazy video to see. Somebody from any military, in this case, the Brazilian military, to be coming forward. There you go. To be coming forward and doing these drawings. It's very strong, and to just have him kill himself 3 months later, of course, it's suspicious. And it is connected. There isn't any other way to look at it. So there you go. What's this document here?
This is one of the documents that was received from FOIA, where it just goes into some detail about what these military officials collected during their time there in Brazil. So I thought I would share that with you. And again, a lot of this information is public. You can find it on the Black Vault.
Now,
So,
Cristina, let's go back for a second.
mhm.
And let's do these back to back. I just want to see this for myself. Okay. Yes, here's this. That's Trinidad, 1958.
Mhm.
Now put up that FOIA document again.
Can we do two at the same time? Can we both share?
I don't know. Can we?
I don't know. We're going to find out. No, we can't.
Okay, but
But
look.
they're similar in shape.
Very similar. Look at that.
Interesting.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I've said so many times over the years. You know what I trust in ufology, or the paranormal, or the supernatural, or a car accident? You know what I trust? My eyes. That's what I trust. That's what I trust me. And I turn around and I see what we're looking at back to back. 2 cases in Brazil, 20 years apart. Yeah, 20 years apart. And look at the similarities there. That's
Very similar in shape.
Yep. And both from government sources too. Ooh.
Dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun.
All
Keith,
right,
thank you so much. Thank you for the super sticker. The next one happened in 1979, so just 2 years after Colares, and this happened in Mirassol, Brazil. And what happened here is that Brazilian security guard Antonio Carlos Ferreira was abducted from his workplace, a furniture factory in Sao Paulo, on July 28th, 1979. According to his own accounts, Antonio was approached at his workplace at 3 a.m. because he's the security guard walking over the entire factory. So he was approached at 3 a.m. by 3 humanoid figures who tranquilized him with a light emitting gun before taking him aboard a small ship, which carried him away to a larger craft farther away from his original location. Once on board the ship, Antonio states that he was positioned in front of a large television like device and presented with a variety of images before being forced to mate with an alien woman. Okay, after which he was tranquilized again and then returned back to his workplace. Pretty crazy.
Phasers set to stun.
There you go.
Right. Okay. You left out a few details though.
I did. I made it nice and brief. Please fill in those gaps.
Let's go with the 3 legs coming off of the bottom of the craft and watching it land. Very, very similar to Antonio Boas, and again, very similar to Socorro, New Mexico. A couple of other things of note, that the beings were once again 1.5 meters tall.
Mm-hmm.
And Antonio Boas specifically states 1.5 meters tall. And we have that here in this case too as well. And then, of course, we have a sexual encounter
Right.
that takes place too as well. No comments about pubic hair in this case. So,
Well, aside from that, this Antonio Ferreira, also mentioned that these beings also had pointed ears, slanted eyes, and human like mouths. They also lacked eyebrows or eyelashes
right.
and spoke in a language that was superficially resembling Japanese,
Oh, that
like you
was
had
it.
mentioned a little bit earlier.
Right. So many cases, so little time. and they all just kind of blend together. But yeah, right. It was interesting in this case about the Japanese, and again, the pointed ears, right? Phaser set to stun. What do we do about this case?
Well, it gets more interesting, Jimmy, because not only are we seeing all that, but you mentioned, and I'm not going to say the word, but the color red, right? Okay, so some said that because he wasn't the only one that had encountered with these beings. So some said that some entities had dark skin and red curly hair, while others said that these entities had light skin and straight black hair.
Yep. And look at the two of us, right? We have completely different hair. We're both humans, right? Why wouldn't aliens? What do they all only have to have gray bald heads? Do they all only have to have Nordic blonde hair and blue eyes? So you're going to go to their planet and that's all you're going to see I really seriously doubt that. And if we took randomly, we got 10 people together, right? And put them on a ship and went to a planet, they would think that, right? If they're thinking like we're from 10 different planets, right? Short, skinny, tall, fat, blonde, brown hair, gray hair, bald, male, female, others. We can bring some non-binary, and suddenly, Asian, African, American Indian from India, and then throw in somebody from the United Kingdom and really throw them for a loop, and then and just this wide mix. Well, if it's okay for us to do that, why are we surprised, that beings from another planet could have different colored hair or different body shapes and different heights? And so I dismiss all of that. I don't know why we've got these blinders on when it comes to descriptions of aliens, that they all have to be exactly the same, that they're not allowed to be different, that Nordics are Nordics and little grays, alien grays, all look exactly the same. No, I don't buy into that. Now, here's the other part of this case, though. It wasn't just one encounter.
That's right.
He had encounters, dozens, over years. This wasn't a one-off isolated event. It continued for most of his life.
And his next encounter happened in 1982 when he entered the craft again. He saw the same alien woman that happened a few years prior, but this time accompanying this humanoid alien woman was a child as well. And so it was placed in his mind to the idea that that could have been their child, his, Antonio's, and this alien woman's child being raised in this craft or being raised on a different planet. That is something that we don't know. But with quite a few alien abductions that deal with intercourse or with women having their babies taken from their womb, right? Allegedly. Some of them are able to meet these alien humanoid children. It's not always the case, but sometimes they are given permission to do so. And I find that kind of interesting. I think if I was a mother, I'd find that kind of touching. But I'm not, so I don't really know how I feel about that. But it's I think just that extra detail, taking that step forward to show humans the child that they made with another entity. I mean, what kind of feelings would go through you?
We hear about this over and over again, and I've interviewed so many that have talked about this that knew instantly that was their child. They knew
they're able to feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. You knew it right away. And you think about this. This case was in late 1970s. Oh, you said 1982. Oh, the original.
Was the second encounter. The first encounter was 1979.
Correct. And so in 1982, this is. I'm sure there were some encounters that were out there by that time, but
Right.
there wasn't the knowledge that we have today. When we talk about these different breeding programs, or however you want to classify them, that when it's men and women, it's not just one or the other. Men are having sex with female aliens, and female humans are having their eggs removed, and in some cases, the child removed, the fetus removed, and they turn around and see their offspring, and they know it immediately. And but this is in 2022. We're talking about something that happened in 1982. Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
And
So
he ended up having a total of 6 encounters between 1979 and 1989. So a 10-year period of kind of running through the motions
it
with
was only
these
16. 16. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, I remember it happening quite a bit.
Yeah,
So-
a lot more. And welcome to the show. Thank you so much for the super sticker. We have a few minutes left, about 15, so we're going to run through these. The next one happened in Varginha, Brazil in 1996, and this is what James Fox's new film is all about. So we're going to just kind of briefly go over it so that you can get all the really, really juicy details in the actual film. So this case, I'm not going to lie to you, before James had done the research and I got to see the film, I didn't really know anything about it. I was pretty oblivious to the story, and let me tell you, oh my goodness, is it a good one. So what happened in 1996, which if we look at it in the reality of time, it wasn't really that long ago.
Nope.
Pretty relevant.
Yep.
So how this first started was 3 girls under the age of 21, they were in their teens, saw the creature first. They saw this alien type of creature, and let me pull it up what they thought it looked like. Okay, that didn't show. Jimmy, do you want to continue the story while I pull this up?
I do. The three friends walking through town, Varginha, and there's an empty lot. There's an empty lot there with what's the word I want to use? Well, buildings, but like a wall, a cinder block wall that is in this yard. And dude is up against the wall, crouched down, and there they are. They're 3 girls, and one is 12, 14, right? 12 and 14, something like that. And they go right up on him. That's the other crazy part. I think that at that age, you have no fear. Right?
Yeah.
Right. No, look, if you and I are walking through Varginha and we see that, we walk in the opposite direction. I'm being straight up. So they got a good whiff, right? They smelled what they smelled. They saw what they saw. They got a great description, and and then so what ended up happening in Varginha. And we'll do this quick because we've got the breaking UFO case that I want to get to next, and still get this in because I have more images. I have more images coming up. Is sightings, right? Varginha, you got sightings. Now you got the military involved. You've got professionals. You've got things flying over the city.
The media is involved at this point.
The media is involved. There is purported nothing has surfaced yet, but you never know. Video that was shot of not only the creature, but of these craft flying all over the town that all has been confiscated and pulled back, and you can't get to. You have threats against civilians and threats against the military, and seriously silencing this case. But there are thousands of witnesses all over that saw this, and everybody clearly remembers the case. It was a huge sensation with the media, and then everything else came into play. You've got the United States Air Force, you've got the United States military, you've got hospitals, you've got doctors, you've got autopsies, you've got bodies, you've got transport of said bodies from different military bases, and too many witnesses, too many people involved. Eventually, this is going to unravel, and that's what James Fox's new movie is about, and it's incredible. The movie is really, really good. By the end of the movie, I think James spoke fluent Portuguese too, and so he's got that going for him. He's a director that speaks Portuguese now.
I mean, it is a beautiful language. When these three girls had seen this being, right? They were mortified. These kids were so scared. They ran back home. They told their mother that they had come face to face with the devil. Okay, this was their mentality, that this scary looking being with beaming red eyes was the devil. And of course, the mother did not believe these children. They're like, "What are you talking about?" So she goes there for herself. And what does she see? She finds the entity still crouched up there in that same location. They also mentioned that they were able to smell this whiff of ammonia, and also there were some footsteps left behind. Oh, I'm sorry, I want to go back. The mother did not see the alien. She saw the footsteps of this entity. Yes, I'm sorry for the correction. While this was happening, a little later, these children were coming to the mentality, because obviously at that moment they were just so scared. But after, they were able to see and remember that this entity was also terrified. It was crouched up. It
It was
was
hiding.
it was hiding. It was sweating profusely as well,
Yeah.
because right here in this location in Varginha, it's very tropical. It's very warm. It's very humid as well. So it could have been possible, in these girls' mentality, they believed that this environment was just not the correct environment for this entity. So it was sweating. It looked unhealthy to these girls' eyes. Red. It had three kind of bumps on top of the forehead. And when they had got back, this being had left, but it while it had disappeared from this location, it left the smell of ammonia and some footprints as well. And then it said, word soon spread of their sighting, which led to widespread rumors within the city of a possible military cover up. Only 2 days after the first incident, another creature was spotted lying in a road, which was later collected by 3 military trucks. Now, that part is completely alleged. We simply don't know if that's the case. And a local zoo janitor also saw a creature that was described to be similar. In the months after the report, during that time, also 3 animals in the zoo died of mysterious causes. Interesting.
Yeah. And I don't want to give too much away because James covers this so well in the movie, and
Yes.
you really need to check it out. But when this case broke, and we're talking about the mid 90s, 1996, and I am knee deep in UFO research, and the internet was just starting, and it was only 1996, and I'm talking like it was the 1700s. But back then, but this case was in heavy research in UFO circles, and and constantly covering it and looking at the news footage. This was a big deal. And so the way that James covers this in the movie, for me, it all came flooding back, because the elements that we are talking about in Varginha, we have the eyewitness testimony of the three girls who are all still alive today. We have that. We have the eyewitnesses throughout the town that are looking up and seeing craft in the sky. We have that. We have the being captured. We have it being taken to not one, but two different hospitals. We have the military converging in on this town. We have, not only is the military there, but that means there's personnel and people that can talk. And so we have people driving vehicles. We have ambulances that are in play here, carrying we have military trucks. We have convoys. Then we have the hospital to military base. And then we have the bigger military base. And then we have the United States Air Force flying in and taking the body out of Brazil. All of this was covered in 1996. And it was this huge, huge case that suddenly, I think that most of us felt at that time, Cristina, there's too much evidence here. We've got the media involved. This is 1996. We have cameras. We have eyewitness testimony. We have the military. We have flight records. We have military bases. We have hospitals. This is going to blow wide open. After the body was taken from the country, and there's information out there on all of this, once it was taken to the United States and disappeared, case goes cold. Case goes completely cold. And for all of the reasons that we would understand, right? And it's the biggest, probably, UFO case in history, where we've got all of this evidence that has been mounting, and it got disappeared. So James Fox is on the case, and the movie is excellent. It's excellent. It's excellent. And I didn't give anything away. I'm just telling you what you can go and read about right now. It's a crazy, intense, and at points terrifying case.
I agree, but at the same time, it's so well done. Rog Chat, thank you so much for the super sticker. And we're coming towards the end of the show, so we're gonna save the best for last, or should I say the most recent for last. And Jimmy, I know you were following this story. Tell us what happened. Where did this take place?
Now, we're of course we're talking about Mage, Brazil, and when Mage happened a couple of years ago, a few things were happening at the same time. One, I'm hosting this show, not this show. I'm hosting Fade to Black.
We get what we're saying.
I'm hosting Coast to Coast. I'm on a TV show or two at the time, and this case blows wide open, and everybo's involved with it, and I'm getting information sent to me from Brazil, Linda Moulton Howe, and the two of us are sharing information, and we're doing shows together, and we're covering this case. And what went down over the next couple of weeks was shocking to me. And I was getting the craziest email from, you know what? I got to stop right there. I don't need anybody subpoenaing me and grabbing my computer. So I don't have anything on my computers. I didn't get any email.
Okay. Good to know.
It never happened. But I'm looking at the events. I'm looking at the communications. I'm looking at everything. Alien bodies, crash retrieval, taken to a military base, video being shot outside of the base, gunfire, things, crazy stuff going down in Mage, Brazil. And now, reportedly, because the case took off and went so big so fast, that there were videos that were showing up on the internet and then being pulled down, disappeared. And I'd get to see something once and go back, it's gone. And that happened dozens of times, not once. It was like everything that I was fed and everything that was coming in suddenly was gone. And now I do have some pictures. Go ahead and pull this first one up. This is a video still of the objects flying right over the town in formation. That's one. And I'm looking at the clock here. This is one of the more famous images. And I'm going to pull up another image in a second that is even more controversial of this object after it landed. That's right. Okay, so there's that. And then we have this. And this is the blue object that you saw from the video still, came down, landed all in it's two videos, but there you go. And there's the object. Now, the Brazilian military goes in. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? That's on the ground. That's landed. And that is this object right here. That's that dude. Okay, so and we're at the end of the show, and you can pull this down. And this is where the story ends. It just stops. It just stops. So we had names of the United States Air Force military commanders and their detachments and their flights and going to Brazil, picking up the object and flying back. And after that, it completely goes cold. There's nothing out of Mage, Brazil. Nothing. And Cristina, I'm going to say that I cover this on Coast to Coast. I cover this on Fade to Black. I cover this with Linda Moulton Howe and others. And we were doing our best. And we had certain people reaching out to us in Brazil. All of that, emails, bad links now. No more email, nothing, no communication, nothing. We had everything was just lighting on fire, and then complete silence. And everybody following up with me, dude, what's going up with Mage? What's going on with Mage? And it's I didn't have an answer for anybody other than the story stopped. There's no Brazilian researcher covering it. There's nobody, nothing. And it was the biggest event 2 years ago. It was crazy how big this event got and how quickly it just stopped.
And as reported by Vice, shortly after hashtag Mage UFO began trending on Twitter, the hashtag disappeared, leading enthusiasts to suspect foul play. Over on the r/UFOs Reddit page, posts about the Brazilian UFO also seemed to vanish. So like you said, it was scrubbed all across the internet.
It was scrubbed.
And now, if you check today, if you check Twitter today and type in hashtag Mage UFO, some things will pop up. There are still articles that will pop up for it, but maybe not to the extent of when it actually happened in March of 2020.
That's right. It was, and I'm telling you, Cristina, as a member of the media that was covering this case, and like I said, on Fade to Black, Coast to Coast television, Linda, Earth Files, this was a big deal. Silence. And I had my sources, I had things, and then everything stopped. Crazy. And there was the hashtag Mage, and that was mind blowing when that happened, actually. And so all of that stuff, it was all gone. Everything on Reddit, all the videos. There were people shooting stuff in the street on cell phones. right? The all gone. It was like what? It was crazy. Yeah, yeah. And people still ask me today, dude. So what's up with Mage? Don't know. I simply don't know. It was crazy time. I remember anybody that was around at that time. I did open lines on Coast to Coast on a Friday night about Mage. I certainly did, and it was it's crazy. It's just gone. Thank you for the close up. I'll see everybody tonight. Cristina, thank you for running on for a couple of extra minutes. I'll see everybody tonight for Fader Night. My alarm system was a non-event. I did kind of panic there, and that was right after we had the flyby.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like, man, it's going to be one of those days, but it's all good. Too much coffee. So there you go. I'll see everybody tonight. Thank you so much, Cristina. Another great show. You're the best.
Bye, Jimmy. Okay, how did you like today's show talking about the hotspots of Brazil? We covered a lot in a short time frame that some cases just did not get as much detail as others. But Brazil's a very interesting country when it comes to UFO sightings, stories, cases, and incidents. Do keep an eye out for James Fox's new film about Varginha, Brazil. It will be coming up sometime later this year. And I cannot say this enough, but you are going to be blown away by how well he did this film. And to keep in mind, he did all the editing in 4 months. Usually, films, documentaries can take anywhere from 6 months to several years. So he did it in a crunch and he did an amazing job. I want to wish you all a wonderful week. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.